When it comes to confidence, self-doubt, women experience more of it. And when I wrote the book for women, I had so many people asking, why would you write a book for women? Don't men and women build mental strength the same way? To which the answer is yes. However, women have different experiences. And I think one of the studies that sums it up best is when we ask little girls and little boys at age 5 to pick out a picture of somebody that they think is brilliant. And they have all of these pictures of professional looking men and professional looking women. Almost all the little boys point to men, that person's brilliant. Almost all the little girls point to pictures of women and say, that woman is brilliant. Well, then they ask the kids at age 7, point to somebody who's brilliant. And almost all the little boys and all the little girls point to men.
From just 2 years difference?
Yes.
Whoa.
And so then you think, well, what happens between the ages of 5 and 7? Well, that's when kids go to school, right? And so who are we showing them pictures of when we talk about famous scientists and politicians and historical figures? It's almost all men. And so then you think, well, what kind of impact does that have on little girls as we're growing up? And we're told you can be anything you want, but by the way, there's never been a female president. Or by the way, here are all these astronauts, and then they just happen to be men. And so I think there's so many subtle messages like that we grow up thinking about, knowing about, and that we're taught. And so it affects us. How do we see ourselves? Well, we're told we're not as good in math, or we're not as capable in science. And we're given that message in lots of subtle little ways, but I think it really sinks in and we start to have more doubt about ourselves. There's so much pressure on our appearance and the way that we look, that men don't have that same pressure on them. And all of these cultural things that we experience, I think, creates this a culture of self-doubt within ourselves.
Yeah, right now I'm really kind of diving into imprinting at a young age and how impactful it is. And I heard you say about how blame, where as a young girl, or young girls get told that it's basically your fault, and young boys get told that it's other people's fault. And a perfect example is when you say, oh, don't make him angry.
Yes.
So talk to me through that.
Yeah, just again, it goes back to the language that we use, and that will often be what little girls are told. Don't make your brother angry, don't upset your brother, versus what we tell boys about, that it's okay to express their anger. We tell girls it's okay to cry, but then as an adult, if you're 30 years old and you cry at work, we tend to apologize because crying isn't okay. All of these bizarre messages. So when we look at self-blame, toxic self-blame, women are much more likely to blame themselves about things that aren't even our fault. And then when they've looked at studies, it's no secret that women apologize more than men. So we say, well, why is that? Why do women always say, oh, I'm sorry, even if, I'm sorry I'm late, I'm sorry about that email, I didn't reply to you on time. Why are women more apologetic? Well, one reason is when they took a look at different social experiments, they found out that when men and women commit the same offense, women find it to be horrific, and men think, oh, it's not a big deal, so they feel like they don't need to apologize. So somewhere along the lines, as women, we think any sort of social blunder, or anytime somebody's upset, that somehow it must be our fault, and we become apologetic. And then there's all of these negative results that come from blaming ourselves too much.
So how would you deal in that situation where, let's say, someone has noticed that and they're like, I just apologize all the time, I think it's actually detrimental to the way that I think. How do you stop saying it? Because then it almost, like, at least for me, because I have tried to get to that point where I stop apologizing, but like the guilt, like inside me, is like I just start feeling guilty about, like, I actually want to apologize, but should I be apologizing? And then the guilt just builds up and builds up. So yeah, talk to me about that and the guilt element of it.
Right. So I think one thing is to remember that just because you feel guilty doesn't mean that you did anything wrong.
Ooh, okay.
Because as women, I think we're taught if you feel guilty, it must mean that you've messed up and you have to apologize, you have to make amends, you have to make things right. But the truth is, guilt is just a normal emotion, and it's often irrational and comes out of lots of other things, not necessarily the fact that you did something horrible. So part of it is just sitting with the guilt and knowing that you can stand it and that it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. And if you want to change how you feel, it's about changing how you think and how you behave. So maybe you just need to evaluate some of your thoughts. Are you beating yourself up? Are you thinking, this person is going to be so angry with me, I've ruined the relationship? then you take a step back and think, is that true? Did I actually ruin the relationship because I was 2 minutes later because I didn't reply to that email? Sometimes we predict terrible things are going to happen. If I don't answer every email that comes in my inbox, then people are going to think I'm a mean person. Whatever it is, it's about changing that script in your head and knowing that you can handle feeling a little bit of guilt. And just because you do feel guilty doesn't mean that you need to take immediate action to try to rectify it.
What up guys, Lisa here. Thanks so much for watching this episode. And if you haven't already subscribed, click that little button right in front of you. Click, click, click away. We release episodes every Wednesday, so be sure to get notified. Till next time, go be the hero of your own life.